Why is IXL used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. IXL is research proven to benefit all student populations, including English language learners and special education classrooms. IXL is an all-inclusive online learning and teaching solution for K-12 that accelerates achievement, saves teachers time, and more. This one platform helps you accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, IXL automatically differentiates learning to help them master concepts at their own pace. Teachers get real-time insights into how students are performing so they can provide timely support. What I love about IXL are the personalized SAT and ACT study plans. Students just need to enter the most recent test score, and IXL automatically generates a custom list of skills they should work on to improve their scores. Discover what IXL can do for your school. Visit IXL.com/PM today.
You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to another Monday Matters with Dr. Jen Schwanke. I'm Will Parker, and Jen, this recording is going to be coming out in the middle of August. I just want to stop for a second, and it's funny, you and I batch our recording, so we're recording this at the beginning of the month. By the time this comes out, I will have been to a convocation in the Cleveland area with the Ohio School Sponsorship Office. I'll have been back to Cleveland for some PD with two different schools. Ohio is becoming my place,
right?
And I live in Oklahoma, but I'm just so grateful for the schools that I'm connected with. And then my virtual PDs that I'm doing with teams this year is starting up as well. What are you looking forward to as you step into a new school year? And by the way, we're going to be talking about a post of yours called Weather versus Climate. But before we do that, what's some stuff going on with Jen Schwanke?
Well, when this episode airs, we will be about the time we're welcoming our students. And so, that's always just such an exciting time. There's so much work that goes into that first day, and hopefully it will be trouble-free and everyone will come and feel like they have returned home, so to speak, returned to their school life.
Well, and since this news is public, I'm just going to go ahead and say this to our listeners, because sometimes I'll introduce you by your title. Sometimes I'll introduce you as the author, Dr. Jen Schwanke, but you've just recently had a position change, and
Right.
Congratulations for becoming the superintendent of Dublin City Schools. And I know that listeners may already be asking, even as I say that, oh my gosh, that's a lot of responsibility, Jen. Are you still going to be able to help with the show? And the answer is yes.
Yeah,
I'm very,
exactly.
very grateful for
So
that too.
I try to be very careful on the podcast not to talk about my day job. That's definitely what I do in the days and many evenings. But this is a side work that you and I do on our own time that we just have a lot of fun with. So yes, I'll continue to do this work, and the connections that I have across the country and really around the world with other principals, that's what drives this Principal Matters work. So I'm really glad you brought that up so that I can clarify to anyone listening that my job as superintendent will, it'll be a big job, and I'm really looking forward to it. But Principal Matters is very separate from that. So thank you for giving me the chance to say that.
Yeah, well, congratulations, Jen. And I know that with every level of new responsibility comes new lessons. So I'm looking forward to just walking through the content that we're doing on the show from the perspective of all of these roles that you've been able to serve in as teacher, as assistant principal, as assistant superintendent, and now as a superintendent. But a few weeks ago, you wrote a post called Weather versus Climate, Short-Term Discomfort or Long-Term Impact. Why don't you set the stage for us?
Well, this came, a friend of mine actually said, how do you think of these stories and these connections to a leadership lesson? And I said, well, this one was because I got caught in a horrible rainstorm. And on the way home, I was thinking, there's got to be a lesson in this. But it came because I was walking the dog. It's a perfectly nice day. There were a few clouds in the sky. I didn't think anything about the weather. And then all of a sudden, you hear that rumble of thunder, and it starts to get a little dark. And I thought, what's happening? And then the skies opened up. And I mean to tell you, Will, I felt like somebody was up there with buckets pouring them on my head. I mean, it was pouring sheets of rain. And I was a half an hour from home with the dog, who's looking at me and whining, like, what are we doing? And I didn't have anything. I didn't have a hat. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't have a phone. So I was stuck. And I decided at one point, well, there's literally one choice here, and that's I just got to turn around and walk home. So I did. And, I was lucky because that storm, it did pass pretty quickly. There were some big old plops of residual rain, but, I started to think about that as a storm because I felt as just a storm, nothing more. When I finally got home, I felt really triumphant because I had weathered the storm. And for school leaders, especially this time of year, especially, there are these things that blow in and many times unexpected. Many times if we had looked at, the weather app, we could have seen it coming, but we didn't. And similarly, we sometimes don't know when people are going to react a certain way, when they're going to really push back hard, when there's going to be a lot of deep emotions. And it's important to distinguish between just a storm, some weather, and an overall climate. That's the analogy I make in this newsletter, because climate is something where it happens regularly enough, it's slower, it's systematic, it's persistent, it's long term. And so, I live in Ohio and it was July. Thunderstorms happen. That's climate. But when things roll in, it's very easy to think, oh, this is, this moment of being dumped on is going to be forever. But you have to weather that and keep your eye on the long-term climate of your school.
So this may not sound like it connects, but it does. The other day, because we've been experiencing heat waves in Oklahoma, 100 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, no rain, humidity. Jen, you can just imagine the stress of that kind of heat on your body, but also on your property and on your plants and all those things. And so the other day I've been so frustrated because we've talked about this in another setting where I kind of like cold and you kind of like hot, but I think it's because I can't control the hot and you have more cold than I do where you live. And so, but I was sitting in this moment of frustration the other day and I thought, wait a second, there has to be a wiser way to deal with heat stress than just being frustrated. And so I'm actually going to do a little research. And so I started doing a little research, and because there have been climates, this where I live, this is not unfamiliar. This is the way it is. But there are also climates that have dealt with heat stress for long times. And by the way, none of this is a commentary on the horrible things that are happening as a part of global warming and the fires. And there are people that are listening to this right now that are under some really dire conditions, depending on what part of the world you live in. But I'm just talking about where I live. Heat stress is a common experience. What I discovered, Jen, was especially when I started researching not its effects on us, like our bodies, but on our plants and our properties. And these are things you're going to already know because you grew up on a farm. But it was a great reminder that the more you include ground cover, shading plants, deep-rooted grasses, the more moisture can stay absorbed in the soil of a property and the less heat it radiates. And when I told my son Jack this, he said, oh yeah, Dad, the other day I saw, because he follows lots of social media people that love to talk about the plains of Oklahoma, because he loves Oklahoma weather. And we have a large part of our state was once covered in tall grass. And Jack said that this he follows this guy that likes to talk about soil, and he took a thermometer and he measured the soil of his front yard, which was all Bermuda grass, on a 100-degree day, and the heat coming off of it was actually 120.
Wow.
And then he drove out to the tall grass prairie and he dug down into the dirt in that tall grass, and it was also 100 degrees out there, and it was 80 degrees in the soil there. And the point he was making is we often rob our climates of the very thing that's going to protect them during the severe weather. And so that's Will's really, really long way of coming right back to what you said earlier, which is, okay, if we know crazy weather is going to be happening at some point, how do we focus on the most healthy climate and culture we can create so that we can handle that bad weather when it comes. We can't stop it.
Right.
You can't stop it, but you can certainly lower the stress of it. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think that it's so easy when the storm rolls in or the heat is intense or whatever, the ice, the fire, to panic and think this is the problem to solve. But it's not. The underlying work, of course, is the long-term climate in your school. And so I did put in the newsletter 4 questions that we can ask ourselves when a metaphorical storm rolls into our schools. And this is timely because many times when principals stand up in front of their staff for the first staff meeting and they say, hey, here's a new thing we're doing, they might get immediate pushback. And so that's what these questions are framed into, is that pushback. So the first question is this pushback, is this storm a sign that the work is wrong, or is this just a natural symptom of change? Is it just some weather, right? The second question is, if I adjust this strategy am I doing it because I want to improve its impact, or am I just trying to quiet people down, hush people up? I have to decide what I'm doing. Am I improving the impact or just trying to avoid the storm? And then, I love to ask questions about time. And so the third question is, 6 months from now, will this noise matter? Will I even remember this storm? And then the fourth question, 6 months from now, if I hold this line, will there be lasting positive impact for our students? So those, just kind of going through those questions in your head, will help you determine, is this weather or is this climate?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I want to just park on a couple of those for just a moment. That first one, when you are experiencing severe weather at your school, and you guys can fill in the blanks on what that means, because I'm speaking directly to you, Principal Matters listeners, is this pushback a sign that the work is wrong or just a natural symptom of change? And we all know that depending on the time of the year, depending on whether something is just beginning, that level of stress is always higher.
Mhm.
Especially, I like to compare any kind of school year to like mountain climbing. The beginning, everybody's so like ready to go. Their packs are all fresh. And then as the climb begins, man, you start getting really irritable and tired, and there's lack of oxygen. And the question at that point is, well, do we just all turn around and go back? Or maybe we weren't prepared for this climb. Maybe we should have stopped and done some things to hydrate and get ready to go that we need to stop and do. And so the question you're asking, Jen, is the pushback a sign that what we're doing is just wrong, or is just the natural symptoms of change? And you have to really, I think, as a leader, stop and make sure, which is it? Which is it? Is this just the natural pushback, or does this mean that we actually need to pause for a second and change our strategy or our goals or outcome? The other thing that you say here is you're looking at the question is focusing on the impact. Like, I can adjust the thing that I'm doing here, but why? Why am I adjusting it? Am I adjusting it for the short-term benefit that I might get because it quiets people down? Or am I adjusting it based on what we have collectively decided are the most important outcomes for these kids or for the school? And boy, how do you know the difference?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways you can know the difference. One is by doing a gut check. Am I just really uncomfortable because of this pushback? And so I want it to go away. Am I forgetting why we did this in the first place? Am I losing sight of the goals and my stated outcome? So that gut check is first. The second is, always rely on a team, rely on someone who can say, no, 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 no. And I've heard that before, for my team members. Now, remember, Jen, what we're trying to do here. And I'm like, you're right. Thank you for the reminder, because I thought this pushback was indicative of a bigger problem, and it's not. It's just pushback. And, take it back to my rainstorm. I had a choice. I could continue to sit there and get soaked, or I could turn around and head toward home where I could be out of this weather. And that's just enduring it. And there are things as leaders, we just need to endure, but it doesn't change our intended outcome.
Jen, I have been kind of obsessed this past year with Wendell
Yes.
and there's this wonderful poem that I think I shared with you over the summer
Mhm.
called the Mad Farmer Liberation. It's just one of this. It's kind of a Wendell protest poem where and he wrote this way back, probably when you and I were just children, but he was trying to voice this concern with an obsession of industrialization and kind of an abandonment of the importance of small farms and how they nurture our environments and our communities. And I'm not going to read the poem, but I'm going to read just a part of it where he says, this is just one stanza. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant and that you will not live to harvest. And what I love about that stanza is it's a reminder that if you really want to know you're making a difference in his context, in farming, you have to think about the long term. Like, what is going to be existing when I'm long gone? What can I be planting and not even touching that's going to, bring a benefit to generations long after I'm here? And the same is true about our school cultures. What are the things that you're planting and investing in that are going to be there to nurture people long after you're gone? And Jen, they almost always include relationships.
Mhm.
They almost always include strong systems of support. They almost always include revisiting the beliefs that we all hold in common together that keep us united around what's best for kids. And so I know that sounds so heady, but sometimes I think we just need reminders that those climate investments, and I'm talking about your school climates, those climate investments are the things that are going to matter. They're going to matter long after the politics, long after the next phase, long after whatever the trends are. Those things can inform our work, but they certainly shouldn't define the culture or the climate of our work.
That's right. That's right. And it's about patience and being able to see clearly. And again, if you can't see clearly, just last week, I think we talked about making decisions when you're feeling impulsive. If you're not seeing clearly, definitely rely on a team member to say, okay, I'm not feeling great right now. Is this weather or is this climate?
Well, Jen, as we wrap up, we're in the middle of it. This is now when we release this Monday Matters, people are just stepping right back in. And as they do, I know that I love your newsletters because they're so. By the way, I'm just gonna. Last time we talked, you taught me this word. What was it called? Proflection.
Proflection. Yeah.
Yeah, proflection, where you stop and you just kind of like reflect on what did we just do. So can I proflect with you for just a second?
Yes.
Because this is really, I think, important for leaders. You talked earlier about friends will ask you, where do you get these ideas for your newsletters? And when I proflect on your newsletters, you will take real life experience and ask yourself the question, what is it, the lesson I'm learning from this? But then that becomes, I'm going to call it the hook,
right,
for something that is important for you to pass on to someone else. And so good teaching always includes a hook.
Right.
And so you think about this the next time you're in a classroom, Principal Matters listeners evaluating a teacher, usually a great lesson will begin with some kind of hook. I used to have a professor that said something I didn't understand until I became a teacher. He would say all the time, disequilibrium results is the beginning of education. That's what he said. Disequilibrium is the beginning of education. And I used to just go, why does he always say that? And then when I became a teacher, I realized you have to shake up the thinking of someone first before they're open to an idea. So Jen, thank you for weather versus climate, because you're being soaked by a rainstorm.
Right.
Led us into this really, for me, helpful conversation. How can our listeners stay connected with you and your books and this newsletter if they want to find you?
Yep. They can find me at jenschwanke.com, and they can subscribe to the newsletter there by just dropping their email in, and they will get this newsletter every week.
And Principal Matters listeners, today's post, as well as all of our past 500 plus episodes, is available at our website at principalmatterspodcast.com, or you can find those at my website at williamdparker.com. Until next time, thanks for doing what matters, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review. In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.